Good afternoon, it's wine o'clock here again at the Wineman's. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Cigalus Wait from Gerard Bertrand. This is the 2019 vintage, the latest vintage of this amazing biodynamic wine. In this video, I'm going to tell you why Gerard Bertrand is my favourite French wine grower and what makes Cigalus quite possibly my most amazing favourite white wine. So let's start with Gerard. He has been voted European Winemaker of the Year and also one of France's most accoladed, most incredible winemakers. He makes brilliant wines, biodynamic, organic wines, just like this one, down in the Corbière and in the Languedoc in the south of France. He has been making wines since he was 10. His dad took him out, showed him all about winemaking and said, Gerard, you might want to mess around and play rugby and have fun, but I will show you how to make beautiful wines so that in 40 years' time, you will have more knowledge than most of the winemakers in France. And it shows, because all of these years later, Gerard still produces incredible wines. So, Cigalus. Why is this important? Well, Gerard actually lives at this estate. He bought the estate back in 1995. And the previous owner had fallen out with the local president who said, you must only plant local varieties. He said, nah, the hell with that. I want to plant international varieties. And when Gerard took over that estate, he thought, there's something here. I'm going to plant Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc and Viognier as well. And so he continued that breakaway tradition of international varietals. And then the interesting thing was, in 2002, Gerard decided he wanted to make the entire estate biodynamic as well as organic. He'd written an amazing book that talked about how important biodynamic was when it came to producing the optimum fruit and how living soil would make the most incredible vines, which would then allow the most incredible fruit to come from those vines, which in turn would mostly make the most incredible wine. And that is what you've got here in this particular bottle. So this is around 70% Chardonnay, 25% Viognier and 5% Sauvignon Blanc. Bit of a crazy mixture. And why? Why would you have such a crazy mixture? Well, Gerard has tasted it in many, many different vintages and he wants it to be the optimum expression of place. And that depends very much on the vintage. So the harvest conditions for the 2019 vintage were actually very, very good. So that allowed him to use an awful lot of Chardonnay. But then, this is the interesting thing. When you produce biodynamic wines, and he discovered this after about 4 or 5 years, the acidity goes through the roof on those particular vines and on the actual fruit that comes from. So the Chardonnay, when he started to harvest this after he changed to biodynamic, he realized that the acidity was almost on the same level as Chablis. So he thought, well, I don't really want this expression in my wine. I want something that's much softer, that's much fruitier, that's easier to drink, that's the sort of thing I can just enjoy a glass of. So he decided to use malolactic fermentation, where it takes the tart malic acid and naturally converts it into more softer lactic acid. And that's what he's done with this particular Chardonnay. So you get a really beautifully balanced wine, which is the other thing that you get with an awful lot of biodynamic wine, is this incredible balance and this finesse and the beautiful acidity that comes through, which when it's made in the hands of a great winemaker can produce a beautiful wine. So you're going to get honey characteristics, which is typical of a Chardonnay. You're going to get buttery characteristics, but you're also going to get peaches and apricots and like a blossom characteristic that comes through from the Viognier. But then the Sauvignon just gives a little bit of a nudge of a grapefruity, zesty, sort of interesting background flavour. Now, pair this with whitefish. I think it's great, but Gerard recommends it drinking on its own because as this changes, and don't over chill it, that's one of the most important things. Just an hour or so in the fridge, not even at the top shelf, just in the middle shelf, because you don't want this to be over chilled. You don't want to drink it for refreshment. You want to drink it for the majesty of what is in this biodynamic wine. Now it kicks in this particular vintage at 14.5%, and it is an amazing, amazing wine. It's not the cheapest, of course, but why would you want a cheap bottle of wine? But equally, it's not the most expensive. It kicks in around 20 odd pounds a bottle, but if you want to impress someone, If you really, really want to impress someone, if they say, I don't like Chardonnay or anything like that, give them a bottle of Cigalus. Tell them to enjoy it. Tell them to drink it over a sustained period of time. Buy a case, because Gerard says this will keep for 10 years. That's incredible for a white wine. You can see how it develops, how it changes in character and in complexity. And I think this will reward you for many years. I think it's beautiful, so will you. Cheers.